Well, good evening. My name is Kevin Perkins. I just want to say thanks to Jane and Dennis for having me here tonight to share with you my story about what it is I do. It's kind of a unique story, but let me just say that I'm a technologist. I build electronic web type things for people. And to give you kind of a sense about the theme, about my sort of tinkering, if you will, is if you build an app, people will lose their minds. And as we'll go through my story, that has lots of different meanings depending on the context. I graduated high school in the late 80s, and I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. I was always an entrepreneur at heart and really enjoyed learning and discovering new things. And kind of around the mid-90s, right when the internet started to take off, I'm kind of fortunate in that I see myself being in that generation where I knew what a rotary phone was and then was able to be right there at the beginning of the internet. So it's really kind of a neat thing. If you talk to like my kids in their age, they're just like, what's a rotary phone, you know? So anyway, it gives me a deep appreciation for, you know, technology and what's possible, and kind of lets me dream. And so with that kind of an attitude and that enthusiasm, I was able to move forward with that internet wave, and through the bubble, as they were calling it, was able to form a small corporation. I would fashion it like a strike team that would go into various businesses, like, you know, highly funded startups that were trying to build whatever, or Fortune 50 type companies that needed internal systems. And they would hire me and my little team to come in and build whatever, e-commerce sites, or, you know, intranets, or content management systems. And so at that time, that was, you know, very novel and new. And again, you know, building those apps, people are really blown away by those kinds of things. So by like 2002, we spent a lot of time and energy. We're getting a little bit distracted from the regular business, working on all this mobile stuff. And by 2003, we just said, you know, we have to kind of change our business model. We have to get people engaged. And so we transformed our model some, and we launched it as a public-facing website that people could go to. So if you type in squeezer.com on your phone, you could go to our website, you could type in an address, and you could actually use our site to go and proxy and broker other content. And you could actually just sit there and, wow, this works. So if you build an app, people's minds will be completely blown. And it was, because right away, it became a worldwide app. People from Latin America, definitely Europe, because Europe and Asia were at the time far ahead of us at mobile. Speaking of Asia, we had Chinese dissidents using our app to get around the national blocks to get to content. We had so many people with devices that were just not thought of to be as mobile or different, like web TV users. They were just hailing and saying, this is the best stuff, because now we can actually use this to watch TV or use the internet on big screen TVs, which is kind of an interesting, you know. So we had a lot of interesting ways with this to essentially blow people's minds. And we got fortunate too, because it started to get noticed, and big telecoms were starting to contact us and saying, hey, we want to license this. And, you know, at that point, it's just kind of an app. We didn't really have a plan, we didn't have the whole thing, so we ended up raising a little bit of money. We shuttered the old business and said, let's dive into this. Let's make a go of it. We don't have a plan, we have some money. And of course, then my wife was saying, no. So I kind of blew her mind, but not in a good way. What are you doing? And so we struggled a lot through 2004 or 5. And, you know, it got really hard, you know, and that's a big leap, you know. I didn't grow up Catholic. I didn't grow up having any religion. Really, my father was a fallen away Catholic. Wasn't cool to be like that in the 60s or something, I guess. I don't know. And my mom was, you know, she was a spiritual person, but not, practicing. So I didn't grow up with that. And I remember vividly taking my oldest daughter to her elementary school one morning because my wife went back to work as a teacher, and I was kind of becoming the work-at-home Mr. Mom guy. And I just was so frustrated and so just, it was a really just kind of a very, a moment full of despair. And I remember just at that time just saying, God, this is a weird conversation for me at that time because I didn't have a personal relationship with God. And I said, God, I really need your help. And I was petitioning him for the wrong reasons. Being an moral person, you think, well, if I ask God, he's going to help me out and fill up my bank account. That's kind of how that usually works when you're like that. But nonetheless, it still had me asking God, for help. And I remember it was just like, it was weird. It was like this infinitesimal voice saying, go to the church. And I did. And it was like, don't just go, but go now. I want you to be with me. And that was a big time. That was a big time for me at that moment. Little did I know how much it would transform me. So just to kind of fast forward here, my business practices at that point really changed. And I think just because of going through RCIA and becoming a person who's on fire, so to speak, I graduated, got all my sacraments. And basically, as soon as I did receive all my sacraments, I got really involved with the church. I was helping with RCIA, lecturing, Eucharistic minister. I went through the nights and got my 4th degree. And, I was really active, but I really didn't have a sense of direction of where I was going. And so I was, in a way, building an app, a religious app, and blowing minds. People were like, what's going on with you? Why are you like this? Why are you, and the business was kind of self-running at that point, 2008, 2009, and I was doing some consulting on the side, and I just felt like I was entering into this God job, Doesn't pay a whole lot. Boy, the 401k and the retirement is awesome. It has seriously divine and eternal benefits. So I just felt like I was just learning about ministry, learning about my relationship with God. And, just recently, this last year, we had a bunch of licensing arrangements with a squeezer that finished. And so I felt, compelled to make the next app, if you will. And so as a sort of a lark, I've been involved with the church, with technology, and they said, what if we make an app for Christmas? It's like, okay, we can do that. And it was just sort of like, well, let's just see what happens. And we built the app, blew a lot of minds. And now we're thinking, so now it's just like, God puts you in a position to build an app. It doesn't have to be technology. You replace app with what it is that you like. But are we responding to that call? And so now I find myself sort of like I fashioned the term digital deacon. All I do now is basically doing all my tech stuff, but I'm really now involved with bringing this technology into the fray with this new evangelism that the Pope put out. The ability to integrate social media, etc. And it's a fantastic time to be a Catholic because, it's sort of like, the printing press was. But basically what I get this sense, and maybe everybody else does, I don't know, but I get this feeling like there's something really big for all of us right now around the corner related to this type of work. And so I picked St. Paul to be my patron saint, and it's interesting. I never knew what the calling was because he was this great evangelizer. And so I kind of see myself maybe have found this call, which is great. Thank you.
Kevin, can you say a little bit more about the touching that group that we don't seem to do a very good job, we the church don't seem to do a very good job with, the 18, 19, 20 to the, now you have children and maybe start thinking of returning it back. There's that gap in age. How might technology help with that group of folks who are very techno-savvy?
Sure. So, like I said, I think we're in this really interesting time where we're going through a whole new level of change in the church at large, but it also is at the level of our church. And we have a culture, in my view, that there seems to be kind of a belief system with the people that are sort of the elders of the church, that we still do certain things a certain way. And really the kids are completely different. They're not dispassionate. They're just looking for an app that's going to blow their mind, figuratively. And so we have to go at it in a way that will meet them in their space. You know, right now there's, I forget, it's something like 30 or 40% of Catholics go to Mass now every week. Or might even be less. And so if we're going to envision like my 11-year-old and my 14-year-old daughters being young adults in the church, I'm not thinking about what's the bulletin going to say. I'm going to be thinking about how do I get that message to them in this computer that they have in their hands, that they're already looking at TMZ and Snapchat and Instagram and everything else. But if they had a very prosperous, fruitful message, an app that blew their mind spiritually, why should we as Catholics reject that? It's another tool, not a rule, a tool. When I say app, it's a global term. Yeah. Because they're very bifurcated, multifaceted kids. They don't look at any specific thing as their source. Like I said, they've got multiple apps. So we as Catholics have to become a little bit more aggressive, understanding, and realize that this is just how kids are communicating with each other. There's some statistics that say, I think it's like 40% of all teenagers have had a conversation or some sort of a relationship with somebody they've never met in person. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I mean, I have plenty of clients that I've worked with virtually that I've never met in person. And they all send the same check to me in the mail. And I give them the same service. So it is possible. That's kind of a hard concept to understand sometimes.
Are you working on things like that right now?
Yes, I am actually. Because of the app that we wrote, an incredible amount of visibility, and people from the diocese that are working on the Christ Cathedral campaign, doing a lot with them. There's folks in Long Beach and other dioceses that have contacted, not just me, but other folks here at the parish who are involved with the technology piece. People have gone to funerals and saw the technology class that we were giving and called me up and saying, hey, can you come and talk to us? We'll pay you. I mean, it's just, there is a desire to do this kind of a thing. And I'm just excited to be a part of it. I didn't know that God would, God's app for me is blowing my mind.
Thanks, Kevin.